Good evening. It is August 31st, and there's not much left of it. It's got about 20 minutes left. It's about 20 to midnight. And welcome to Walking Between the Worlds. This is Raven Dana. I promised a while ago I was going to have a couple of little chats about the visitors and experiences that people have had with them. Interestingly enough, the way those synchronicities work out, I had some issues, as you know, with my sound, and so I was not recording for a couple of weeks there. And now that I'm back up and running and can talk about the visitors as I promised, I've also discovered, I received word that a documentary that one of my experiences is actually going to be in will be on air Monday, September 5th, 9 p.m. Eastern, both on Discovery Plus and on Travel Channel, and it is of course called The Visitors. It is the story of Whitley Strieber's cabin in the woods and the many people who have had experiences in and around that piece of property. So it should be fascinating. I haven't seen the documentary, but I know some of the stories that are in it, and again, I don't know how much of my story's in there and how much is on the cutting room floor, but I invite you to watch it again. This will be Monday, September 5th, 9 p.m. Eastern, Travel Channel, and Discovery Plus. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the visitors today. There's a lot of speculation as to who they are, what they are, where they've come from, and lots of people, I mean, thousands and thousands of people have had experiences. Some people have had experiences from the time they were very small. There's a lot of talk about how experience seems to be generational, that people who have had experiences then have children who have experiences. So one of the things that I wonder is that since experiences like this seem to have gone back for many, many generations, that it's not at all that it's a new phenomena. It's that it's being spoken about differently now. Where once some of these between worlds things were considered to be just part of life, you know, especially in Celtic traditions, where people talked about the shining ones or the little people and experiences that people had with them. And again, not always pleasant experiences, sometimes very frightening experiences, but yet it was part of everyday life and it was accepted as such. And now, because we, I don't know, we're coming at things from a different place. I don't know that it's a particularly good place, but I think that we've come to this understanding or this postulation that we have to know who they are, why they're here, and what they are. And I'm not sure that we can know, or that our minds are able to. Our three-dimensional Earth brains may or may not be ready, evolutionarily speaking, to wrap around whatever they are or wherever they're from. So when we talk about the visitors or aliens, I'm not necessarily saying that they're aliens from outer space or aliens from the stars, although of course they very well could be. But they could also just as easily be between world beings or other dimensional beings. There's a lot of experiencers who have had visits with the dead at the same time or very close to or in conjunction with visitor experiences. So for my purposes, when I say the visitors, I am specifically talking about the small child-sized beings with the large heads, with the big slanted dark eyes, the ones that resemble the cover of Whitley Strieber's book, Communion. Long before Whitley's book and long before the term visitors came into the general population, I was having experiences. So I'm 67. I had experiences starting that I can remember, starting when I was 4 or 5 years old. And it was, in fact, that face, that picture, that's what I saw at the foot of my grandmother's bed when I was very small. Now, again, in my upbringing, my grandmother had dreams that came true. My father was a funeral director and an embalmer, and death was not, it wasn't looked at the way it's looked at in other families, I guess I'll say it that way. And My grandmother also had experiences with her. She saw her dead brother, Max. So these kinds of things in my household were accepted and they were commonplace. And they weren't spoken about like scary, spooky things or like paranormal or any of that stuff. It was just part of life. So I think that then when I started having experiences at a very young age, even though it was scary, it was also more a sense of wonder and more a sense, I had a sense of curiosity and a sense that, you know, if my grandmother could see her dead brother Mac and talk to him, well, why couldn't I talk to whatever this was at the foot of my bed, right? Actually, it was my grandmother's bed. I slept in my grandmother's room a lot. And there was a moment where I asked my grandfather about what I was seeing. And he asked me the question, are you afraid of it? Does it frighten you? Does it do anything to frighten you? And I said no. That, and if it did, I have no memory of it. But I do remember having it speak to me in my mind, and I do remember seeing things, like being shown things. And I clearly remember what I would say to my grandfather, well, I kind of fall asleep, but then I fly out the window and fly down by the river. So this is the Hudson River, right? I grew up in Yonkers, New York. So these things are, you know, it's very interesting. The main thing I think I want to talk about today, though, about these kinds of experiences is that we mainly hear about, you know, all the bad stuff. It's like we hear about abductions and we hear about night terrors and we hear about people who have anxiety and people who can't get over their experiences, and we hear a lot about those kinds of things. And I think, you know, just like watching the news, we're not going to hear the good news. We're going to hear who got murdered. We're going to hear what store got broken into. We're going to hear where the ambulance went and what cars crashed. So there's something in our culture about focusing on that which is bad and frightening and a threat, right? It's something that's kind of written into the way we do things, or what we consider entertainment to be. I mean, I don't know about you, but watching the news is not entertainment to me. So I take, you know, I regularly do something other than watch the news. But I do think that our way of talking about things, especially unusual things, strange things, things that we can't explain or things that we can't quite understand or even remotely understand in some cases, I think that we categorize those things as threats automatically. And I think it's a mistake. There are people who have experiences where the wonder and the joy and the contact experience itself is so profound and so life-changing in a positive way that, and we don't hear about it, right? And I think that's something that going forward, and especially in like the second time, I'm going to talk about this subject again, but there are people who have had healing experiences. There are people who have had unbelievably powerful visits through the visitors with dead relatives and friends. There are people who in the midst of war, military people who in the midst of war had encounters with non-human beings that saved their lives, that brought them out of the war zone or rescued them or healed them. So again, we don't hear about those things. But we do hear a lot of talk about what are they here for, and is this a threat? And of course, you know, if the military, if the Air Force sees something in the sky that they can't explain, chances are pretty good they're going to try to shoot at it, right? And so on the other hand, we have this conversation, well, if they're here and they've been here for hundreds of years, many generations, or thousands of years, as the ancient alien researchers say, then why don't they just make themselves known? Well, I don't know. You tell me, why don't they make themselves known? If something that you couldn't fathom showed up on your porch, would you invite it in or would you shoot it? So again, we're not all that advanced. We still demonize each other because of things like our religious beliefs and the color of our skin and our sexuality. So how can we expect, I mean really, how can we expect to be greeted by beings from other worlds or other planes of reality in such a way that we aren't just automatically going to try to do something horrible to them. You know, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid and still is The Day the Earth Stood Still. If you haven't seen it, there was a remake in 2008. And to sum it up in a sentence or two, essentially there's an alien that comes to Earth, looks like human though, and the memo is, you people better learn to get along and cooperate or you're in deep trouble, right? That's the sum of the movie. And of course, you know, they shoot at him because, well, it's what humans do. So we, I think, need to put our attention on what is there to be gained when we have an experience that we can't understand. We're not even sure how real it is because it's so out of bounds strange. When we find that we're encountering something in the middle of the night or in the middle of a road, and then our next memory is 3 hours later, or we wake up to lights in the house, and then we suddenly have the urge to go back to bed, to go to sleep, which makes no logical sense, right? And then we begin having snippets of memories that come out of that later on down the road. When we have those experiences, I think the question that we might ask is, what is here for me that is beyond my fear? Because I think in cultivating a relationship with beings that show up regularly in our homes and in our dream space and in those between realms, between sleep and waking, that if we can cultivate a way of communicating, that we can benefit far, far more than we imagine. We might even come to see more about what it is to be a human being, what it is to have the potential to be evolved and develop in a way that right now is foreign to us because we're so stuck at this point in time. I do think that we're at a critical point in history. And I think that the experiences that we have with the visitors, because they're coming more to the surface of our conscious awareness, and people, ordinary people, are talking about these things more. UFOs, UAPs, middle of the night encounters. I think that we're at this place where we can bring forward our own evolution by giving our attention to the question, what's in this for me beyond the fear? What can I get out of this? And so I don't know if you've had experiences or if you know people who have, or if you think that people who have had them are lunatics, you know, some people believe that. You can't explain something like this to a person that hasn't had an experience. But I just want to leave the thought that, you know, I imagine that whatever the visitors are and wherever they're from, that if they had the intention of taking us off the face of the planet, between their technology and their intelligence, they certainly could have done it and would have done it by now if that was their intention. So, you know, I don't know. I take a measure of relief in that and solace in that, and also that my experiences with what we call the visitors have been largely positive, largely enlightening and I don't know, expansive, that my view of human beings and the wonder of the world and the profound way that we're interconnected with each other and with nature has come to me largely through these experiences and brought it home to me in a way that I live with that openness almost every day, that sense of wonder almost every day. And I feel a tremendous sense of peace. And I have a great hope for humans that we can evolve beyond the thought of domination and the thought of difference and separation. So the visitors, they have visited us for a very long time, you know, and how long have they been with us? And are they actually the shining ones? Are they actually what the Celtic folks call, you know, fairies, gnomes, fairies, elves? Is that part of the culture of what visitors are? So I think these are very interesting questions. I just want to sort of stir the pot tonight and throw a few things out there for you. And we'll come back to this conversation. If you do watch the documentary and have questions for me about anything on it, I'll be happy to answer as best I can. Also, I'm reminding you that next week, a week from today, Wednesday the 7th, there's a 3-part class about journeying between the worlds coming up. So if you would like more information on that, please take a look at my website. Simple as can be, ravendana.com. Just go take a look at, and you'll have all the information on that class. It will go up starting Wednesday the 7th for 3 weeks. All right, well, thanks for joining me this evening and have our little introductory chat about the visitors. And I'll talk to you again about this subject one day next week. I hope you have a lovely evening, and goodbye to August and hello September. And I'm glad to welcome fall and all the good things that go with it. If you're a summer person, I'm sorry. Summer's about to go bye-bye. But here comes the glorious, beautiful fall, and I'm very happy for that. Thanks for being with me, and I hope you have a great holiday weekend. Bye now.